Okay. Let's do something. Leave your notes down and stand up. Okay. I already started radically, yeah? Everyone is up? Great. Is anybody breathing here? Is anybody breathing? Breathing. No breathing? Oh my God. Okay. Now, I want us to do, how many of you breathe consciously? The Indians, some Turkish? Only a few. Okay. How many of you are aware when you're breathing? Okay, about half of you. Great. Now, I want us to make a trick. What I will ask from you to do, and I really want you to put the best of efforts, is to take a very deep breath from your nose. Inhale, hold as much as you can the air within your lungs, and make the utmost effort not to release the air from your lungs as much as you can. When you're ready to suffocate, when you're ready to die, then exhale. As soon as you exhale, I want you immediately to be seated. Okay? Is that understood? Any questions? You exhale from your mouth. Okay? Are we ready for this? Okay. I will count from 1 to 3. And when I do so, we will proceed. Let's see if the sound is on. Is the sound on? The sound? Okay, can you hear now? So, 1, excuse me, 1, 2, 3. Let's go. Take a deep breath. Hold it as much as you can. Almost to die. When you exhale, you will let yourself sit down. Whoever exhales, sit down. Bravo. Good. Amazing. Let's see. Not yet. And the winner is? You keep there. 1 minute and 10 seconds. Okay? Roland was on 1 minute. So the Germans are after the Indians, eh? Very good. So, let's see something now.
As a magician, I try to create images that make people stop and think. I also try to challenge myself to do things that doctors say are not possible. I was buried alive in New York City in a coffin, buried alive in a coffin in April 1999 for a week. I lived there with nothing but water. And it ended up being so much fun that I decided I could pursue doing more of these things. The next one is I froze myself in a block of ice for 3 days and 3 nights in New York City. That one was way more difficult than I had expected. The one after that, I stood on top of a 100-foot pillar for 36 hours. I began to hallucinate so hard that the buildings that were behind me started to look like big animal heads. So next I went to London. In London, I lived in a glass box for 44 days with nothing but water. It was, for me, one of the most difficult things I'd ever done, but it was also the most beautiful. There were so many skeptics, especially the press in London, that they started flying cheeseburgers on helicopters around my box to tempt me. So I felt very validated when the New England Journal of Medicine actually used the research for science. My next pursuit was I wanted to see how long I could go without breathing, like how long I could survive with nothing, not even air. I didn't realize that it would become the most amazing journey of my life. As a young magician, I was obsessed with Houdini and his underwater challenges. So I began early on competing against the other kids, seeing how long I could stay underwater while they went up and down to breathe, 5 times while I stayed under on one breath. By the time I was a teenager, I was able to hold my breath for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I would later find out that was Houdini's personal record. In 1987, I heard of a story about a boy that fell through ice and was trapped under a river. He was underneath not breathing for 45 minutes. When the rescue workers came, they resuscitated him and there was no brain damage. His core temperature had dropped to 77 degrees. As a magician, I think everything is possible. And I think if something is done by one person, it can be done by others. I started to think if the boy could survive without breathing for that long, there must be a way that I could do it. So I met with a top neurosurgeon, and I asked him, how long is it possible to go without breathing? Like, how long could I go without air? And he said to me that anything over 6 minutes, you have a serious risk of hypoxic brain damage. So I took that as a challenge, basically. My first try, I figured that I could do something similar, and I created a water tank and I filled it with ice and freezing cold water, and I stayed inside of that water tank hoping my core temperature would start to drop. And I was shivering, and my first attempt to hold my breath, I couldn't even last a minute. So I realized that was completely not going to work. I decided to call Oprah. I told her that I wanted to up the ante and hold my breath longer than any human being ever had. This was a different record. This is a Puro 2 static apnea record that Guinness had set the world record at 13 minutes. So basically you breathe Puro 2 first, oxygenating your body, flushing out CO2, and you're able to hold much longer. I realized that my real competition was the beaver. In January of 2008, Oprah gave me 4 months to prepare and train. They had doctors with sitting there waiting. And then suddenly I hear screaming. And I think that there's some weird thing that I had died or something had happened. And then I realized that I had made it to 1632. So with the energy of everybody that was there, I decided to keep pushing. And I went to 17 minutes and 4 seconds. As though that wasn't enough, what I did immediately after is I went to Quest Labs and had them take every blood sample that they could to test for everything and to see where my levels were so the doctors could use it once again. I also didn't want anybody to question it. I had the world record and I wanted to make sure it was legitimate. As a magician, I try to show things to people that seem impossible. And I think magic, whether I'm holding my breath or shuffling a deck of cards, is pretty simple. It's practice, it's training, and it's It's practice, it's training and experimenting while pushing through the pain to be the best that I can be, and that's what magic is to me, so thank you.
Sorry. This wonderful man, this unbelievable man, the whole talk is 18 minutes, but I had to cut it down. You have to see it, all of it, on YouTube, to see what he went through. This is just a summary. What I'm saying is our athlete here, super athlete here, managed to have 1 minute and 10 seconds of breath. And this guy went up to 17 minutes. So I hope we started with realization here, that there are people who are able of super abilities. They have metanormal capacities, and they are able to extend human abilities to a level which we are not, the average people in the bell curve are not aware of. So, I passed out, and if you don't have it, you can have it, an inventory with metanormal capacities. It is it's categories of metanormal capacities. Unfortunately, this workshop should be for 2 days, as a pre-workshop actually. So what I suggest, and if you all want, I will be in this room tomorrow afternoon around 6 o'clock. We can all gather here if you wish, and split in groups and do the work that has to be done with this inventory. It will take us about 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. But by sharing this and going through the inventory, we will have all the ability to really understand what is going on. So I will, right now, I will outline what our story is all about, okay? So, I say tomorrow because today is the General Assembly, and I think it's going to be held here, so we don't have that time. So tomorrow it will be far better. If you are available, and if you wish to come, that would be a great opportunity. The great Henry David Thoreau, I learned this, at least, by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. That's my motto, you know. Henry David Thoreau, one of the best American writers ever. A few words, why am I here? Why is this workshop taking place? How do things connect? How do they make sense? And why am I presenting this workshop? Usually people, when they see me in conventions and congresses for 10 consecutive years, I've been talking about possessions, attachments, past lives, birthmarks, birth defects, exceptional experiences, transgender operations, all the exceptional things in life I always study, because it's through the exceptions that you go further, okay? So, let me share a story here. In July of 1990, a friend of mine invited me in Kenya, in Africa. And at that time, I received a book by an uncle of mine in the United States, which was an introductory book to the Silva method. And I was reading that book on the plane, and I was fascinated. And I ran into a passage where this guy was in need, desperate need of money, and to support his research on hypnosis. And he saw a dream. In that dream, he saw the winning lottery number. okay? He was in Texas. And they stopped for gas in a gas station. They went in, and he had shared the dream with his co-friend, and that friend told him that I think this is the number you saw on your dreams last night. So that was it. So they bought the ticket, and it was the first ticket, and they won thousands of dollars, which was enough money to start the investigation on hypnosis. So after I read that passage, I went to Nairobi, to the UN. I think the lady who works here, Natalia, in the UN is here, bravo. And I went there to find a job in Nairobi. But when I went out of the Kenyatta building, I was robbed of all my money. Thank God I was always splitting money on my pockets, but they took most of it. I had some just to get home and some little money. My friend said, don't forget it now. When you go back to Greece, you will send me the money. Behave here as if you never, ever lost your money. But I was really upset, very upset. And he said, our plan was to go to the casino tonight, so let's go to the casino. There was a beautiful casino in Kenya. I don't know if it exists in Nairobi still, but an Italian had designed it. It was beautiful. Beautiful African music and different levels. It was fantastic. So we walk in, and as we walk in, we speak Greek with my friend, and the doorman, a very big, tall guy, was a Greek. He said, what the fuck are you doing here? Why are you here? Oh. So we meet. He says, free entrance. Go for free. You don't have to pay. So we had the money to buy one, Bitcoin each, to bet. Mark, well, how you call them. So we went in front of the table of a roulette. I had never seen a roulette. I didn't know what a roulette is. I said, what's this? How are we playing this? Well, he said, this is red, this is black, even, odd, first dozen, second dozen. Oh, okay, nice. So I take the 2 marks, I place them on the first dozen. They triple immediately. The ball comes in, they triple. Then I take those and I put some on the even. They triple, the double. Those I leave here in the first dozen. Triple, double, red, black, everything was winning, and it was piling up. People were confused, what's going on here? So then the casino is really upset, and they come and change the lady who was throwing the ball into the roulette to change the energy. They know very well about energies. And my friend on the side says, play the 13, play the 13. Now, the logical thing would be to play the 13, because for 7 consecutive hits, I was staying on the first dozen. But when he said play the 13, my eyes close and I see a black screen and I see number 4 going like this, gold, number 4. So I say, forget the 13. What is 4? I was looking this, oh, it's black, everything on black. Is it even? Everything on even, first dozen, and then, okay, I have some left, let me put it on 4. And 1, I put on 13. And guess what? What came out? 4. When this happened, we looked at each other. I said, stop. I did this. I lived with this money for a year. So, if something bad happens to you, there's always some way to get it back in another way. The lesson was that you are on the right track. Okay, that happened, that was a deviation, you had an accident, but okay, we will correct it. You are on the right track. Keep on studying, keep on researching. So that, for me, That was absolutely metaphysical. If you put down the mathematics of the bets, because I have them laid down, we are talking about a possibility in the millions, okay? All this, I didn't, the only mark I lost was number 13, okay? Next metaphysical experience that really changed my life. You know, I was not born a regression therapist, I was not born a hypnotist, no. I was, as everyone, you know, a normal person, not abnormal, yeah. So, and I did a lot of professions. One of the professions I used to do was building roofs, wooden roofs, for houses, for hotels and such things. So, it so happened that I was building a roof for a church. It was a house that next to it had a church. And it was winter time, heavy winter. But at that, there is a space in Greece and probably in Turkey as well, we call them the Alkyone days, about 10 days in January where weather is very pleasant and very sweet. It was within these days that we were building that roof. And now it's the very last day, and I placed the very last tile on the end of the roof. And it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's almost getting very dark. And I'm through. And then, all of a sudden, an amazing odor, an amazing, like incense, you know, like the ones they use in churches, starts coming all over the place. And I talked to my cousin, I say, what's happening? Where is that coming from? Nobody's around, nobody came in, nobody is here. How can that be? We go downstairs, nothing smelled. We go out, again up on the roof, it smelled like this. We, you know, tried to use all possible rational explanations. It was impossible to find any other explanation than the fact that since the church was ready and finished, it was like a thanks from the deities, okay, that thank you very much for this. I don't know. I took it that way. I had no other possible explanation because no one was around. And that changed my life as well. Of course, what mostly changed my life is the fact that I joined, I became a regression therapist and hypnotherapist, and the fact that I joined Earth 10 years ago. I was in Istanbul in the second annual convention there, and it was so glad because I was living in an island in Corfu, discovering new things, and it was so nice to find people that are discovering such things from Tomsk, Siberia, from England, from Africa. It was an amazing experience for me. And of course, then I decided, I ran into the concept of possession and attachment. This is my book, it's outside on the booth. In case you want it, you can take one of it. So that was what drove me there, here. As I told you already, we look at the exceptions, as Dr. James said, the father of American psychology. Now, another thing is that I will quote Harold Bloom. He's a professor at Yale University. I think that a materialist definition of genius is impossible, which is why the idea of genius is so discredited in an age like our own, where materialist ideologists predominate. You see, he took the best 100 minds of humanity, he studied their bios, he wrote a massive book, it's a huge book, and he tried to see why these geniuses, why these exceptional people are the way they are. It's a fabulous book. It's Harold Bloom. Now, what is this figure? Another number here. Guilford, J.B. Guilford, was the president of the American Psychological Association in 1950. And he asked from his students to study all the papers that have been published from the very start of psychology till 1950, all the papers to be studied, and see which of those deal with creativity and genius. And look at the rate. Only 186 papers in 75 years had dealt with the phenomenon of genius and creativity. Why? You cannot catch it. It's not measurable. You cannot weigh it, you cannot count it, you cannot do anything. So, I've been listening all the time about how the brain neurons interconnect and how everything is happening so intensely in the brain, and this area is responsible for this area is responsible. This is neophrenology for me, okay? And the reason why I'm saying this is this. Now, that scan on your left is of a human brain, of a normal brain. The other guy, it's not a so normal brain. If you can see the black area, it's full of water, okay? Now, this guy had a scratch on his leg. He was itching here on his knee. And he went to the hospital. He couldn't stand it anymore. He was itching all the time. And he went into the hospital in Marseille. And when he walked in, they said, let's do a brain scan. And they scanned him, and they come with this scan, the left side now. Huh? Empty brain, nothing there. Okay? He was a person who was working for the government, a public servant, 44 years old of age. He had children. He was a man like us. Of course, his IQ was very low. It was in the range of 75. It's the lowest you can get. But on the other hand, you could see the anomaly on his scalp. You know, it was a bit. He had water, hydrocephalia, it's called, and they dragged the water out of him when he was a baby, and one more time when he was 14. He never had a problem. Now, his brain, as you can see, is only on the side of the scalp, okay? I'm making this case. There is another case with a guy who has 125 IQ score, and his brain tissue is only 3 millimeters all around the scalp. There is nothing else there. And he's a genius in mathematics. He's excelling, and he's doing now his dissertation in mathematics. What I'm saying is this neophrenology that everything comes from the brain is rubbish, okay? The brain is a very good smartphone. It is a very good device. We should treasure it. We should love it. We should thank that we have it. But on the other hand, these exceptions disprove the rules. So, let's go now to the big question of the day. Where are you physically located when you get your very best ideas? I hear. In the shower. 100 euros. Huh? In nature. Yeah, it's correct. It's later on. Huh? Bed. She said bed. Yes. Yeah. No. It is there. The second one. Yeah. Cooking. Great. Right. Reading, okay. In the toilet was the last one. You have to remember me for this. When something goes out, something comes in, huh? Meditation, of course. All meditative will run into this. But the point is, when you are in your everyday endeavors, when do the ideas come? Okay? Where are you when physically, when the ideas come? And how from the idea you move on to innovation and inspiration. Okay? So let's go into the theory a bit. Let's start from Albert. The intellect has little to do on the road to discovery. There comes a leap in consciousness, call it intuition or whatever you will. The solution comes to you and you do not know how or why. You know, he was on a bike, riding his bike when he connected everything he had been studying for years, and there was the connection. So let's look at the resources. What are our resources for trying to understand creativity, genius, and metanormal capacities? The first resource we have is the ideas, okay? According to Plato, everything pre-exists. It's already in an ideal world, and what we do is actually we are downloading this information and we bring it down to the earth. Before somebody invented the chair, it was first conceived as an image, as an idea. So there is a wealth of ideas. Think of it as the Wi-Fi, okay? And when you tune in with the idea, that means that you have connected to the right site, website, and then you download it here, you put it on the hard disk, and then it becomes a chair. Okay, we got it? Software, Wi-Fi software, hardware. Okay, that's the road. I put it in modern technology, so we are more convenient with it. The point is, for instance, when I was another metanormal ability of mine, and I would say amazing capacity, was the fact that one day I woke up with a full symphonic orchestra in my mind. Okay, I saw everything and heard everything. I was a minor musician. I was playing just the guitar. I was not a special musician. I didn't know how to write it down, but it was the most beautiful music ever heard. So I tried, you know, in every way to keep it, not to let it go away. I was trying to sing it, I was trying to put it, but it's like trying to do that with when you hear the Requiem of Mozart. It's impossible, it gets away. You cannot do that. But anyway, the thing that came out of this falling down was probably the most beautiful song I ever wrote. Back 30 years ago. Paul McCartney saw yesterday as music in his dreams. He downloaded it. When he woke up, he played the music, he wrote down all the notes, and then he placed the words into the music. Okay? And it was the most successful song of the 20th century. So that's, and another thing that proves this, that the ideas pre-exist, is what happened with Schumann and Schubert. Back in the early 19th century, I think it was, both of them wrote exactly the same tune, but they were living in totally different areas. So, in a concert, somebody had heard Schumann, and then he said, this is Schubert's songs. I don't remember now who was first. The point is that they came together, they realized that they didn't steal each other, but then one of them had to withdraw and let the other one sign the work. They actually tuned in the very same music, and they wrote it the same way. It's amazing, and it's one of the most amazing musical things in history of music. So, we have the ideas, we go to memory. What would happen to the ideas if there was no memory to retrieve them? If you have no memory to keep them, you're lost. I mean, if the information just flows from one ear and goes out to the next, you're lost. You need to use memory. Last year we had our convention in Greece at the mountain of the 9 muses, you know, the mothers of inspiration. But their mother is mnemosini, which is memory. So the ancient Greeks knew very well that for memory, for inspiration to exist, you have first to have memory. This is the catalyst. Without memory, nothing can happen. Okay? Another source of resources we have to look into to understand this issue of creativity and genius is the pioneering individuals, because these people behave totally differently than the others. They are far more creative and inventive, and we have to see what they do. So we have to study them. But not only the pioneering individuals, we have to study the extraordinary experiences of exceptional individuals. This is absolutely imperative. Finally, we have to study the human transformative and metanormal capacities. That's the inventory you hold on your hands, okay? And that is how we are going to use it. If you want tomorrow afternoon at 6 o'clock, we can do that here or elsewhere. They will tell us where to do it. I have no doubt whatever that most people live, whether physically, intellectually, or morally, in a very restricted circle of their potential being. Much like a man who, out of his whole bodily organism, should get into a habit of using and moving only his little finger. We all have reservoirs of life to draw upon, of which we do not dream. The great William James again. So let's go to the world of ideas, the first pool of resources. What do we have there? Intuition, inspiration. Inspiration, by the way, means the spirit comes within, okay? The spirit comes within. Downloading the Wi-Fi we were talking about. Imagination. Where would you be without imagination? Where would you be if you could not imagine an upcoming event? Where would you be if you were not daydreaming? Huh? Visualization. We have to practice that every day, guys. If you want something to happen, you have to visualize it. You have to make visual images. We'll come in detail to this later. Another thing very important is the so-called incubation. You let things to incubate. In other words, after you have done your research, your work, your daydreaming, your imagination techniques, let it marinate. Let it there marinate. Take the salt, take the pepper inside, and let it sleep. Incubate. Once you incubate, then it will spring up. Then, what happens once we incubate? We have the so-called insight. Huh? We see within. And eureka, the Greek word, evrika, of Archimedes, when, oh my God, he discovered, when he was in his bathtub, he was relaxed, he was in his hot bathtub, and suddenly, evrika, and started running naked. That's the aha feeling, you know, how we feel when we discover things. And a further version of eureka is the epiphany, which is more spiritual. Huh? It's a spiritual understanding. It's more than just a connection of understanding. We have a variation which is called serendipity, when nice things happen together and they connect while they have no connection with each other. We have a breakthrough. Huh? When you have a breakthrough, you, bam! Oh my God, that was it. And that causes transformative thought. You have to transform your thought. Brainstorming. Sit down with your friends and start brainstorming without judging on an issue you have. Let them say any stupid idea there is. Write them down all. No criticism. Just put a clock. Say 5 minutes. Brainstorm. Let all the ideas come in. Then start judging. Okay? We are talking about download. Sometimes when you download advertisements, you download, just download. So then you reach to creativity, and creativity, of course, leads to innovation. So someone who had completely lost his way in a forest, but strives with uncommon energy to get out of it in whatever direction, sometimes discovers a new, unknown way. This is how geniuses come into being, who are then praised for their originality. Friedrich Nietzsche. Now, let's go to the second part of our resources, which is, of course, what the counterpart, memory. We said ideas, now it's memory. How do you improve your memory? How do you work with your memory? You have to be attentive. You have to focus. If you don't focus, guys, if you don't listen to what I'm saying, you will go outside and nothing happens. You have to focus. You have to be able to shrink in, zoom, and focus. Okay? Otherwise, you will not absorb, which is the next necessary ingredient, this information. Which means that you are interested. You have to be interested in a subject. You cannot absorb everything, of course. Huh? And for me, interest is okay, but I believe that curiosity is more kinky. Okay? You have to have enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is, again, a Greek word which means the God within. You have to have your God within you. And of course, you have to concentrate. Huh? These are important elements for you to develop as a person and be able to work on becoming a pioneering individual. Now, pioneering individuals, the so-called self-actualizers. Abraham Maslow, one of the great psychologists, criticized modern psychology and especially Freud. Why? Why should psychology always be on the pathology side? Psychology should be the study of the psyche and of human behavior, should be. Why should we base the whole concept of human interaction on 8 cases that Sigmund Freud studied? He had 8 case studies, and whole modern theory of psychology is based on these 8 studies. Why should we focus on this, on people with disease and not with, to people with health? Abraham Maslow went to the other side. He studied healthy people who wanted to improve their lives, and they became self-actualizers. So we will go more thoroughly on this later on. Geniuses, talents, charismatics, prodigies, inventors, and artists. Those are people who we have to study in order for us to understand what are their common features and how could we use them in our life. You said, you heard the magician, what he said, the guy who kept his breath for 17 minutes? What he said a while ago. He said, if I can do it, you all can do it. Of course, we don't want to do it. What's the reason for it? If he did it, that's okay. We know he did it. My life is not going to be better if I breathe 17 minutes, but the point is that by such exceptional persons, we learn some things. But you can do something you really like and you really want. So, pioneering individuals and self-actualizers. This is the study of Abraham Maslow back in the 50s and 60s. He took all his students out and he told them, go out and study these people and bring me back whatever you have. I keep only a few of the 20 characteristics that he is using. One of them is the efficient perception of reality. All these people have efficient perception of reality. They are not living in a dream world. They are task-centered. They have acceptance of themselves, others, and nature. They are autonomous. They are comfortable with solitude. They are socially compassionate. They have a great sense of humor. Important. Where do you go without humor? And they do have peak experiences. Let's see something I found on the internet, on Facebook. You get the point? People see the success, but they miss the whole picture. It's a beautiful. How many times did you fail? How many hours did you spend studying? How many hours were you trying with hard work? These people don't see it. They see only, oh, you got the Nobel Prize. Wow. Anyway, let's continue with the pioneering individuals, the geniuses. What do they have in common? They think what no one else is thinking. They think fluently. They make novel combinations. They connect the unconnected. They look at the unseen side of things. They are looking into other worlds as well, and they find what lay people are not looking for. That's their basic characteristic. Okay? So let's see what are these pioneering individuals. There is a subcategory. We would call them charismatics. Okay? What are the charismatics? Those conferred with a divine power or talent. Charisma is again a Greek word. And there are three goddesses, the three charms, they are called. And they provide you with your charisma right at the very birth. You either have it or you don't. You start with a very good, let's say, downloaded program, okay? You have a very good software there. Prodigies, on the other hand, are persons under the 10 years of age who exhibit exceptional abilities for their age, okay? And talented people are also exceptional aptitudes and skills. So that's the difference, charisma, okay, prodigy, and talent. But let's look at it for a while. Let's go to it. We don't have sound? No? Wait, there you are. Let's go again. Sorry. Okay.
To some, genius is an arbitrary label. The strict definition is an outstanding artistic or intellectual ability. In short, extreme talent. 13-year-old Archiana Kromeric fits the bill perfectly, and she has a unique claim behind her gift.
The earliest memory I could recall is probably when I was around 4 years old. One day I started having these very amazing and mysterious visions. His voice was following me and guiding me through these galaxies, and I asked him, who are you? And I started calling him God.
Archiana is an art prodigy from Idaho who claims that God told her to paint. And for 9 years, she hasn't stopped.
I like to say me and God are both in control of everything. So he tells me an idea, and I could just take that idea and make it better and polish it better and just put it into paints. So he's like my personal teacher, my tutor.
She was 4 years old when I knew there was something special about her, because she was describing a lot of new things on spiritual matters, and also she started drawing exceptionally well.
Akiana developed an intense interest in sketching. By 5 years old, she was already drawing at a level way beyond her years.
Myself, I thought she was dreaming. I thought there was something made out of an imagination. But when she started describing it more and more, it became apparent that this was actually something that did happen.
By 8, Akiana was painting portraits on giant canvases.
It kind of took me aback because we never read the Bible, or we didn't have any kind of spiritual connection.
With no artists in her family, she was completely self-taught.
This is actually one of my absolutely favorite and most memorable paintings. This is called The Prince of Peace. I painted this when I was 8 years old with oils. Many artists all around the world, they always ask me, so how did you do this and how did you do that? I was like, I don't know, I just did it. It's very complicated for a child to explain what they did. The only way they can explain is through painting or through their creativity.
Described by art critics as a phenomenal talent, she has now produced more than 100 paintings, ranging from realist portraits to fantastic landscapes and the natural world. They can each take anywhere from 15 to 300 hours to complete.
Her parents have been selling her paintings. They have built a $1 million house up somewhere in the north. To increase or decrease? Okay. You mean on the video? Okay. My voice? Okay. So let's go to the next.
Every time I look at him and when I see it, it is, I don't know, it blows me away. I look at him and I say, wow.
Music is everything for 10-year-old Ariel Lanyi, a child prodigy from Israel. Ariel is more than just a pianist. He's a composer too.
Well, this could be an intro, and then there could be a totally
This was there before?
His achievements are beyond, far beyond of any most gifted child that I've known.
The question was, why do you take criticism from your teachers and not from your parents?
And not from your mother.
And not from your father either.
Well, because my teachers are way smarter.
Well, that's nice. That's a nice.
Parents Gabby and Olga have raised their son in a home dominated by music. Ariel was destined to be a pianist right from the off.
Teachers?
We were negotiating for a piano when Olga was pregnant with Ariel, and she said, well, why are you so anxious about it? What's the big deal? He's not going to come back home from a hospital and start taking piano lessons. And I said, no, but I don't want to bring a child back from the hospital into a home that doesn't have a piano.
Neither Gabby nor Olga could play the piano. It was for one person only, their newborn child.
When he was born, he started listening to music right from the beginning, because there was a tape that his father prepared for the occasion. And from then on, he was listening to music almost 24 hours a day. There is a theory that very young children can be taught anything. They don't have to be born that way. But the earlier you start the education, the more you'll be able to achieve.
It soon became apparent that the theory was working.
He was less than 3, just a little less than 3, and we were driving in a car, and he was sitting in the back, and we're listening to the radio, and It was Beethoven's second piano concerto, which I recognized, but I don't know the key, and I didn't have the CD, so I told him this is a piano concerto by Beethoven. And Ariel said, Ian, and I didn't have the answer because I didn't have the CD to look at, right? And obviously I cannot tell. So he says, in B flat major. And I looked in the mirror and I said, are you sure? And he said, oh yeah. So needless to say, as soon as we got home, I take out the CD and I look at it, and it's in B flat major.
By 5, Ariel had already taught himself to play the piano and started taking lessons. By 7, he was playing classical concerts with an orchestra of adults.
In a way, we created it to some degree by exposing him early on. And a little baby doesn't have many choices, so he just lies on his back, and you play Bach, and you play Bartók, and he listens.
Ariel is now firmly on the path for a life of music. But although showing a talent way beyond his years, he's wary of being labeled.
I don't like the meaning of child prodigy, because child prodigy is basically someone who can play fast, and not more than that. Not understanding music, just playing fast.
And how are you different?
Because I understand the music, I analyze.
Are you a pianist or a musician?
A musician.
And are you a genius?
Not yet.
So, of course, a lot of ethical questions could be raised here, because actually he was pushed to become a musician. That's nurture, not nature. That's a whole philosophical matter that I cannot touch at the moment. The thing is that he still is a prodigy, even though he was taught to become. Now, this is how we train. Again, we don't have sound here. What happened again? Don't stop the sounds, please, of the videos.
Okay, fangen wir mal an.
Okay, let's start with an easy one. Let's say 62 divided by 167.
167.
Neuroscientist Thorsten Fehr of Bremen University specializes in studying people with gargantuan powers of memory. Mathematics genius Rüdiger Gamm is his most spectacular case so far.
1-3-7-1-2-4-6-1-7-8-9-8-2-8-4-3-1-8-7-4-3-1-8-3-6-5-6-3-4 Ja, die 3.
To the 30 places shown on the calculator, precisely.
Machen wir ein bisschen weiter mit.
Okay, let's do a few exponents. Let's say 67 to the power of 33.
Eine Dezillion. 821 Nonilliarden, 664 Nonillionen, 894 Oktilliarden, 730 Oktillionen, 78 Septilliarden, 753 Septillionen, 748 Sextilliarden, 347 Sextillionen, 739 Quintilliarden, 907 Quintillionen, 973 Quadrilliarden, 449 Quadrillionen, 122 Trilliarden, 612 Trillionen, 636 Billiarden, 443 Billionen, 46 Milliarden, 968.910.787.
Right up to the last place, precisely.
Ich weiß nicht mehr genau, wie alt ich
I
war.
don't know anymore how old I was, maybe 2 or 3, when I learned by heart that Mount Everest was 29,017 feet, or that Columbus discovered America in 1492. Over the years I moved on from learning historical dates by heart to endless facts about manned spaceflight. Everything about history, geography or space travel interested me. Since I was a child I had a numerical grid in my head where I can fill in what I had learned.
Und da habe ich mir als Kind schon ein Zahlenraster aufgebaut, wo ich dann meine späteren Fähigkeiten habe wirklich reinlegen können.
Scoring consistently below the pass mark at secondary school, Rüdiger Gumm did not give any hints of his superhuman mathematical abilities. Only when he was 20 did he realize, by chance, that he had what it took to be a mathematical genius. While listening to a mental arithmetic champion on the radio, Gam played along and outdid the champion. Gam began to train his talent. Today, he masters all two-figure numbers to the power of 50, 8-figure trigonometric functions, and pi to 5,000 decimal points. Gum earns his money as a mind coach, advising National League teams and top managers on how to improve their memory and concentration.
So he trains people for this ability. He gives them the opportunity to be able to do mathematical equations like he's doing. This guy is a genius, and you know, he didn't know it. He discovered it when he was 20. So, the third category we have to study is the inventors. Of those pioneering individuals, we go to the inventors now. What do they have in common? They are solution-centered, they have a solution-centered mindset. They have a charismatic optimism. They seek knowledge relentlessly. They experiment constantly. And they pursue rigorous objectivity. They want to assure that they are objective on what they are doing. They have a kaleidoscopic thinking. They have holographic thinking. How do they do that? They have notebooks. They keep notes all the time. Wherever they are, they keep notes. They do what we call ideophoria practice. This is a Greek word of downloading ideas, okay? They discern patterns. They see patterns in things. If you saw that movie with the mathematicians, Russell Crowe, where he's seeing patterns in words and things, well, this is how they see the patterns. They express their ideas visually. This is very, very important. They are visual. If you are not visual, become one. It is very important. Visual communication is extremely important. And they explore roads that nobody else has dared to explore. Also, they do have a full spectrum engagement. They have intensity on the one hand, but they relax on the other. You know, Thomas Edison, in his laboratories in Menlo Park, he was doing work, and he was doing, I think he has more than 1,000 patents, maybe more, maybe 2,000. But he was overworking, and then he took a nap. He stood there, he had a little mattress, and he would fall there, take a nap every afternoon. After the nap, a new invention was coming out. On the one hand, they are serious, and on the other, they are playful. They can sit down and play like kids, with kids, and they are very impressive people. And they can understand complexity as well as simplicity. Okay. Also, they seek for solitude. It is very important, solitude and teamwork. What I did not stress a while ago, I think I overlooked it, was the peak experience of Abraham Maslow. All these self-actualizers, what they have in common is a peak experience. It's usually a very deep insight which has spiritual connotations into it. And all these people do have this ability to tune in. And so they seek for solitude because it is in solitude that you can achieve such a download. And of course, they work very well in teams as well. So that's the general chart concerning the pioneers. Now, I will put a quiz for you, okay? This is a quiz. What we are going to see now, I want you to understand what this person is.
Move over, Einstein. There's a new genius in town. Meet Sabrina Gonzalez-Pastersky. The 22-year-old Cuban-American is one of the top physicists in the US and was even called the new Einstein by Harvard University. No big deal.
What, like it's hard?
The Chicago-born physicist has received job offers from left to right, from Yahoo to NASA, and was even featured in Forbes magazine in 2015 as part of its 30 Under 30 in Science list. She was also granted academic freedom from Harvard, which means she's a certified intellectual who can preach her ideas, and Harvard will, for the most part, always listen. Of course, Sabrina's success didn't happen overnight. While most high schoolers were waiting for dates, Sabrina was waiting for approval from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to build her first single-engine plane when she was 14. She was waitlisted until two professors, Alan Haggerty and Earl Merman, saw a video of the plane she was creating, which she uploaded to her YouTube channel. Our mouths were hanging open after we looked at it. Her potential is off the charts, Haggerty said. Aside from graduating MIT with a 5.0 GPA, yes, that's possible, apparently. Sabrina has also taken a liking to studying black holes and space-time, which she's documented on her website, Physics Girl. She's also been granted a fellowship worth $250,000 by the Hertz Foundation, on top of the $150,000 fellowship she received through 2020. Though Sabrina is obviously quite tech-savvy, she even loves editing herself into Audrey Hepburn movies that bear her name for YouTube. She's not on social media. Yep. No Instagram, no Twitter, and even no LinkedIn, which is a huge bummer for those hoping to get in touch. Seems you'll have to build your own single-engine plane to meet her in person at MIT. Share.
There is another video on YouTube. This girl is every day after school building that airplane for her father, and it took her one whole year and I think a few days. She made a perfect airplane out of nowhere, everything on her own. Now, how can that be? Is she a charismatic? Is she a prodigy? Is she a genius? I say it's all of the above, okay? So, back there, if you see back there, where I'm looking there is a map, a chart, okay? This is a mind map, and I made it with a program which is called mind mapping. I have it on my computer. I will check it later on and I will write it down for you. You can download it from the internet. It's free. What it gives you the ability is to build a mind map. You know, Tony Buzan was a neuroscientist, and he realized that the brain is not acting linearly. You don't take a line and you go from A to B to C to D. No. The brain acts in all directions. And actually, if we could have this in 3D, it would even be better. But at least in 2 dimensions, you can see that there are different lines of thought. So the first 3 parts of our presentation have been covered, but you can see the whole extent of this over there in this map. And I will, Free Mind is the program, Free Mind. Free Mind. You can download it, and then I can send you the file, and you can open it, and of course you can improve it, put more things into it. You know, it's an open procedure. It's not a fixed procedure. It's subject to discussion. So I think it's a perfect time to have now our coffee break. Are we on time for the coffee break? I don't know. Is this the correct time? Right on time. Okay? So we have our break, we come back, and we catch up. Excuse me? In 15 minutes. Now it's, what time is it now? It's a quarter to, yeah. So. I guess. You know, a lot of people saw this presentation. Most of the people who were in Elatochori in Greece last year, where we had the annual Earth Convention, saw this presentation. So, of course, they have to go elsewhere to see other new things. But for you here, you are all new, so you are more than welcome, and I hope you enjoy it. It's a long way to go. Unfortunately, time is very limited. I will try to rush, but on the other hand, I want you to retain all the qualitative stuff. So, we were, why I'm seeing, excuse me, sir, I'm not seeing the PowerPoint. Click. Why is that? We got it? Okay, we got it. Okay. So, we studied the inventors, we studied the geniuses, we studied the self-actualizers, but there are some other persons. We call them exceptional individuals because they have certain characteristics which are really very important and definitive. If you study literature and if you study biographies, you will figure out that there are transcendental experiences of sailors, explorers, adventurers, and alpinists. You know, these people who go beyond the limit. I mean, the people who went to the North Pole, to the South Pole, to Mount Everest. Now, there is a guy, Scollum, Joshua Scollum. He was the first man to sail on a sailing boat, and he did the round of the world. He went all around the globe, from Boston, Massachusetts. He went all around the world in 1895, okay? But one day he ran into a storm. I don't believe it was so strong as Irma, but he ran into a storm, and at the same time, he had made a great mistake of eating plums with milk, which caused severe symptoms for him. No, it was not milk, it was something else. It was plums with something else. It's a long time I read it. Anyway, he was in deep fever, he was really suffering, and he couldn't do anything. And he collapsed in the delirium, and then all of a sudden, he sees a guy walking in the boat, out of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean, and he starts sailing the boat. Now, according to this account, this guy was the captain of Pinto. Pinto was one of the ships that Christopher Columbus used to discover America. So, he was the captain of the Pinto. Now, when he finally recovered, what he realized is that the course that he was supposed to cover all night long was already covered, and he was not off course in any way. This is one of the multiple experiences that these people have had. In the North Pole, you hear, presences coming in and helping them when they are in severe snowstorms. Now, let's study another extraordinary experience. You know hyperthymesia? Hyperthymesia or hypermnesia? Okay, this is only 20 people, 25 people all over the globe have this, not disease, it's not disorder, it is an exceptional experience. What is it? They remember everything from the time they were born till today. Everything. You tell them, what happened in 1994, May 15th? They will tell you exactly what were the news then, at the time. Exactly, they will report all the big news or whatever made it to the headlines. They remember everything. It's called also as autobiographical syndrome, okay? They remember everything. But even though they remember everything, this is not, they don't do it purposely. They don't do it on purpose. When they go for an exam at school, they fail. If they read, you know, that doesn't mean that because they remember everything that they are also very good in exam taking, okay? So it's temporary. Now we have acquired autobiographical syndrome. I mean, you were a regular person, and then something happened and you changed, okay? Then we have metanormal abilities of disabled people. Last night we had all these people here who entertained us with this music who were disabled, and thank the organizing committee for bringing these people here. But if we had the time to interview them, you would see that these people have developed other abilities to an extent that we do not have as average persons. We know, for instance, that blind people have other abilities, okay? They hear better, they smell better, in order to cover up for the deficit they have. Then we have the savant syndrome. I will go extensively into this. You know, savant is the French word for a wise person. Rain Man. The Rain Man, yeah. Dustin Hoffman. We have that here. We have the acquired savant syndrome, and then we have the foreign accent syndrome and inspiration through channeling. But let's look at them in more detail. Again, the video is not having music.
Now that I found you.
Watching Derek Amato play the piano, you'd think he'd been playing his whole life. But he says this is a talent he acquired in an instant.
Considered an acquired savant from a brain trauma or brain injury.
Derek says he gained every bit of his ability after a concussion.
Dove into the swimming pool and dove into the shallow end and hit the bottom of the pool. And
a few days later, he says he was at a friend's house, sat down at his piano, and out of nowhere, he was able to play.
It was immediate, so there wasn't a transition. It was just I could play suddenly.
Amato claims he had never played the piano before, but was suddenly composing on the spot.
Oh, hold on, just give me 2 seconds, let me think.
Something he still does.
I'm not sure where I'm going. So my hands just do what my mind is seeing.
Amato gained recognition and says he recently went to the Mayo Clinic and shot a special with the Discovery Channel.
To be able to sit down and have some of the most educated people in the world tell me what's going on with my brain, it was extremely humbling.
He shows us brain scans.
Definitely showed trauma to the exterior parts of my brain.
It says doctors confirmed he is the only documented case in the world of acquired sudden musical savant syndrome from a brain injury. He says he was also diagnosed with a rare condition called synesthesia because he sees the music.
I just see these little squares that move left to right.
Now with some medical insight into his gift, Derek is forging ahead, even working on another album.
I'm pretty lucky and I feel absolutely blessed.
So the sound was not good. I will repeat. This guy jumps into the pool. He falls with his head on the pool, he has an accident, and after he has recovered in the hospital, he plays excellent piano. He had never played piano before. And of course, to me, this is acquired metanormal capacity, and probably it's a possession. And my fellow Turks here said that usually when we have geniuses in music or in other arts, we do have cases of possession, and that we have to take into account, because this guy was an ignorant. He didn't know anything. And all of a sudden, he developed this ability, okay? Now, let's go on to what I was calling about the exceptional autobiographical memory, hyperthymesia, okay? It's involuntary automatic retrieval. But they do have poor memory for arbitrary information. That's what I told you. If they want to go to have an exam, they cannot perform perfectly. They cannot control it, but they can remember any event that has happened in their lives from the very time they were born. And they also do have a time-space synesthesia, like the previous guy with the piano. When he plays the piano, he sees the colors, he sees the notes in colors. And that is why I said it is very important for us, and you will understand in a while why, to become visual. And a lady here came up a while ago and she told me that I have some trouble becoming visual. I cannot visualize. Well, you have to practice. In other words, what are the visual arts? If the visual arts are the painting, sculpture, and all this, you have to use that. Use color in your life, okay? There is no, I'm not good. That does not exist, not in this class. Not good. Everyone is good, and everyone is capable of reaching these levels we saw already if we practice, if we think we can do it. It's only, you have a block here, I cannot do it. Why not? Of course you can do it. You cannot be Salvador Dali, of course, but you can train your imagination, put color into your life. Like Tony Buzan is saying, you have to put color. The brain doesn't work linearly. You have to make your mind map, use color, use images. Otherwise, all the big inventors were using sketches. Huh? They were doing things. This very presentation that you are looking at is actually based on Da Vinci's actual manuscripts, and it's all based on this. I have taken, it's free on internet, you can download it. So, we have metanormal abilities of disabled people, as I said yesterday. If we had the ability to use these people we had yesterday, we would understand that the blind person who was here maybe has a better ability in something else. There was a lady, Helen Keller, back in 100 years ago. Helen Keller was both blind and deaf. Now, Helen Keller, Google her, go into the internet, find the book, or see the movie. There's a movie on her. She made a breakthrough. She managed to find another way of communication through touching, and she understood that symbols are related to letters, and letters are connected to words, and she managed to communicate with the world while she was blind and deaf. It's a remarkable story. Everyone should read it. There was another guy, Jacques Lucien in France, who worked for the partisans against the Nazis. And he was also blind. And they used him, the partisans, to see who would betray the partisan movement and who to attract comrades for the fight. He was the best to sense if a person is eligible to join the movement or not. So, now we go to savant syndrome, an acquired savant syndrome. where we have extraordinary memory. What is this? Some of these people display these common features: calendar calculating, music, fine arts, mathematical and number skills, mechanical and spatial skills, and obscure skills, unbelievable skills. What are these? Subutilizing. Who knows what subutilizing is? Come on, man. You don't know what subutilizing is? How could you? Okay, these people walk in the library, okay? They take a look like this, and they say, here we have 67,463 volumes in 1 second. And then people start sitting down and counting every, and they see that that's exactly the number. That is subutilizing. They are polyglot. Some of them speak 17 languages, and they speak them like this, very easily. And those also, they have impeccable time-keeping. It's amazing how they have a clock in themselves, you know. And we all have a clock in themselves. We have displayed that through experiments in hypnosis, but we are talking about impeccable timekeeping. So let's see the most well-known of these guys. Let's go for the video. Again, no sound on the video.
Did you tell him your birthday?
07/06/1980.
It's a Sunday, and this year it's a Sunday. You retire in 2045 on a Thursday.
You'll be 65 in 2045.
Fantastic.
In Salt Lake City, Utah, everyone knows 56-year-old genius Kim Peek.
April 12th, 2006.
It's a Wednesday, and she'll be 2 years old on Saturday.
And when can she retire?
Good little girl.
When are you going to let her retire?
I'll hold her out until 2071 on a Sunday.
Known by many as the real Rain Man, Kim was the inspiration for Dustin Hoffman's character in the Oscar-winning film of the same name. Brain damage since birth and a rare condition known as savant syndrome have somehow given Kim an ability to memorize facts and information that is without equal.
Savant syndrome is a rare but spectacular condition in which somebody with a developmental disability, such as autism, has some spectacular island of genius that stands in stark contrast to overall handicap.
For years, doctors have tried to fathom Kim's spectacular brain.
I'm just going to ask you some general questions. Can I do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Today, it's the turn of the world's leading expert on savant syndrome, Dr. Darrell Treffert.
When did President Truman remove General MacArthur from his command?
April 11th, 1951.
When did Hong Kong return from British colonial rule to Chinese control?
July 1st, 1997.
When did Saigon fall to North Vietnam?
April 29th, 1975.
When Kim was 9 months old, the medical world said he would never walk, talk, or be able to learn. Proving experts wrong, he is now believed to have the greatest factual memory in the world, memorizing 98% of everything he reads.
I keep thinking that pretty soon the memory full sign has to come up like it does on a computer, but it doesn't. He continues to absorb, and not only absorb, but also recall. What day was Easter this year? What was the date?
It was March 23rd, and we won't see another one this early again until 2160.
When,
we won't see it.
When is the last time that we
1913.
Is that
we
right?
don't see it. You folks should remember.
So how many years before the next?
152 years.
What year will that be then?
2160.
It's believed Kim's talent may be partly down to the fact that his brain is wired in a completely different way from the rest of us. Since birth, Kim's corpus callosum, the white matter that carries vital connections between the left and right halves of the brain, has been completely missing. But somehow, Kim's brain has managed to rewire itself in a unique way. This could explain his extraordinary genius.
Now, what is the earliest that Easter has ever fallen?
1761, 1818, 2274.
How do you figure those things out, Kim? How do you do it?
By looking at my own heart and my own mind.
Kim, like most savants, doesn't explain how they do it. Kim, how do you remember all that stuff?
I just know that.
How do you just know it? How do you remember all that stuff, Kim?
I just know a lot about it.
And they don't really explain their methodology, and I think in reality, savants are not aware of what that process is. Look at savants, whether it's a musician or an artist or a memory giant, is sort of putting them on display, so to speak, and can you stump the genius kind of thing? And that's not what this is all about. It helps them. It's a form of therapy, if you like. A part of that is what we call training the talent, and that's really what the treatment of savant syndrome is to find the talent and run with it.
Find the talent and run with it. For therapy reasons, if you ever run into such humans, help them to develop their talent, help them to ventilate it, to let it out, never restrain them. Because Kim Pick died a few years ago, and thank God he's had his father. I was reading Darrell Trafford's book, Professor. It's called Islands of Genius. It's a marvelous book. And the thing is that he ran into so many cases that, the question was begging about reincarnation because he couldn't explain it in any other way. And he has run into the work of Ian Stevenson as far as xenoglossy is concerned, the ability to speak foreign languages without having been taught. But he didn't do the last step to look into the rest of the work that is on there. It's amazing because he cannot, all his explanations are leading to this way, for some cases, and he's there, but he cannot touch it because of the prejudice, of course. And I thought of writing to him one day. The name of him or the book? Islands of Genius. Islands of Genius, okay? So, let's go on. Okay. Now, we said all the normal, in brackets, normal, metanormal experiences. One of them is inspiration through channeling. Now, there was a guy in England, his name was Matthew Manning, and he was the second most well-known person in the 70s after Uri Geller, okay? All the people studied him at the time because he was famous about poltergeist phenomena that were taking place wherever he was going. They would see things being written all over the walls, things moving in and out, electricity going up and down. He was quite a genuine phenomenon, and he was at his puberty at the time, and wherever he was going, in each school he was going, certain phenomena started to happen. Children were very afraid. They kicked him out of the school, they kicked him from the other school. He was moving constantly. Then he suddenly sat down and started downloading all this information that was coming into him. And he wrote a book which was called The Link. Later on, during his during this phase of his life, now he's not a puberty anymore, he's adult, he sits down, and this is a painting of a German, or not a painting, a drawing of a German artist, Albrecht Dürer, who did such things in 1500s. Okay, I think this one is from 1520, and then the next one you see is made by by Matthew Manning when he is possessed probably by the spirit of Dürer, because he did that within a couple of hours. The whole thing was finished, and there was no structure in the drawing. He started from the middle, and his hand was going like this, and his eyes were closed, and he was in total trance. It was as if he gave his hand to Dürer, and he made that in 2 hours. He was through in 2 hours. Now, I would never suggest to anyone to channel but yourself. Don't allow any... Matthew Manning ran into a lot of problems, and I'm sure if he's still alive, a session of regression therapy would help him a lot. But anyway, he was a very good subject to show us this, that this can happen, okay? Another thing is humor, you know? You hear jokes. What is a joke? It turns things over. It makes new connections. It makes you laugh because it makes the absurd sound very well. I'm sure Beza is saying jokes there now, huh? Okay. Now, okay, Beza, I buy that. The abilities of comedians to reveal the absurd, the ironic, or the ludicrous aspect of life have elements of genius. They sometimes come up with images that by any criteria are extraordinary. We have Hans here, you know, he's the master of humor and jokes. Such inspirations may heal a conflict. They bring a new understanding to a particular set of events, or through laughter, illuminate an entire dimension of life. So now, let's move to the human transformative metanormal capacities. Let's first of all go. Now, here you have the outline, okay? You all have the outline. Maybe Hans doesn't. This we did last year. We will do this tomorrow extensively, okay? Here in this room at 6 o'clock, whoever wants, I will be happy. We can share in groups and do this work, which we cannot do today. I would be more than happy before the party. Then we have a party, you know? We go. So it's nice to have done this before the party. So I will run fast for this, because you have it in front of you. You can study it at home. I will only go fast because time is running. So we have extraordinary sensory perception in this category of perception of external events, which has to do with our senses, okay? So we have extraordinary sensory perception, ESP, the so-called. We have clairvoyance and remote viewing. We have perceptions of entities or events outside the perceivable world. Having the feeling of being watched by somebody. Do you remember the experiments with Rupert Sheldrake? Huh? Any of you? You know, back in the first magnetists in the 19th century, what did they do? They went to a theater, and to prove the theory of Mesmer and magnetism, what they were doing is we're looking at the neck of a person that was sitting a few seats in front of them. And they were focusing on this. I was experimenting that way when I was a kid. Now what happens is that when you do that for quite a long time and intensively, you look at the other guy and he goes, and he exactly knows where to look at. He's not looking like this, where is that threat? He knows that threat is Hans, you know, and he focuses, oh, I got you. So then, you know, I was pretending nothing was happening, but it was amazing. It worked all the times, okay? So intentional watching is now done in an experimental way by the English biologist Rupert Sheldrake. And if you enter into his website, you can perform any of his experiments with telepathy with animals and telepathy among people and such things. Yeah, correctly sensing lost objects. There are some people who have the ability to locate a lost object. feeling presences or of distant or dead people by direct and vivid contact, and superior metanormal capacities, which have to do with the ability to communicate with divine powers. Now, a small example, since we are here in India, it's very interesting because if this story is true, it's amazing, and you can put the sound on, my friend, you can put the sound on. Thank you very much. Let's go.
To peer into her eyes is to see not only the stars, but the whole universe. But today, we're covering them 3 times. Nine-year-old Yogamata is one of many children who went to Gurukul, India, and are now demonstrating the same power.
It's just the mystical power that I got to learn in Gurukul.
She was initiated, actually, by a guru, but we'll talk more about that later. She demonstrated her impressive ability on Capitol Hill, and then again at this Vedic temple in Southern California.
All I can say is, be prepared to be amazed. Can you tell us your name?
My name is Ma Yogamata.
Are you ready for the blindfold reading?
Yes.
Watch as she reads pieces of paper handed to her by random observers, blindfolded.
Director of successful and respected American business.
She plays with toys, letting an audience member mix one set before matching up the colors as though her eyes were wide open.
First the green, then the orange, then the blue, then the blue, then the yellow, then the like a donut.
Wonderful.
Even beating this young onlooker at a game of tic-tac-toe.
X, I won.
Yay!
It's not a trick. It's just a mystical power they can learn. Anybody can learn.
I brought a clipboard with me here. Can we try this and see how it works?
Okay.
Yeah?
Maybe a blindfold with me?
Yeah, we'll get one.
Okay.
Can you see what face I'm making at you right now? You don't think it's funny? So I'm going to write something on this paper and you'll read it to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's say I'm only writing one word. Can you tell me what this word says?
Love.
Wow. Pretty amazing. And now, if I draw something, can you see that?
Yeah, I'll tell you and I'll draw it again.
And you'll draw it again?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. I'm going to draw. I'm not a very good artist. You're probably better than me. Okay, here we go. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's a tree, like a Christmas tree.
Exactly, a cedar tree. Here you go.
Oh,
now.
it's a cedar tree.
Yes, and now you'll draw it for me, right?
Yeah.
And you can't see anything?
No.
With your physical eyes?
Yeah, with my physical eyes. Then here's like a stump.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 1, 2.
Oh my gosh, you're doing each piece of grass exactly the same.
Then like this.
Even the, oh wow.
And 1, 2, 3 dots.
Wow. You didn't even draw just the grass. You drew it exactly the way I scribbled it. You're like, easy, right? Actually, you know what?
What?
I have a couple of pieces of paper in my pocket. Can you read them for me?
Yeah.
I did these earlier. So, here's one.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, why don't you open it?
Know thyself, Swamiji.
Wow. That's exactly what it says.
I see a card right there.
Yep, there's a card, but let's try this too. What is this? Here's another piece of paper.
Oh, it's folded. Nothing. What?
I tried to trick you. It didn't work, huh?
It did not work.
So there's no tricking you, right?
No tricking me.
That's very cool, Yogamata.
Okay. What can one say? I mean, if maybe you Indians here, you can help us if this is a genuine case or not. Maybe you know it. It is.
And I know 3 more kids in Chennai who live through all this. So there is something called right brain activation. I have
Mid-brain activation.
So you verify that this is a genuine case.
When I attended this program, and I was 50% correct. And I met others. So basically, they have a 2-day training program where they call it right brain activation or mid-brain activation, and they have a specific music that's being played for an hour, and then you have brain gym exercises. So what you do is, and so it involves the hand movements and also the eye movements. And after you do that, then they blindfold you, and then, yeah. Kids are much better than adults.
Oh yes, than adults,
yeah,
of course.
because, see, my experience, I just wanted to test it whether it's right or not. So I attended the program. I was the only adult attending the program, so I was 50% correct. So that may be probability, but yes, it works. I've seen kids doing amazing things.
Okay.
So I kept, a photo of my aunt in my purse. And I said, what do you see in the purse? And she said, there's a lady wearing a yellow dress and ta-ta-ta-ta. I was shocked. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressed.
It's amazing.
This training is quite the rage nowadays in India. It's quite the rage, very popular among kids.
I see. I see.
A lot of parents are enrolling their kids for this training.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. It costs $10,000.
It's expensive.
But, I mean, if I had that money, I would certainly give it for my kid, okay, to develop such a metanormal capacity. Yes, please.
I've attended one of these, small workshops, like he was saying, and he's a person from Aurangabad. He's called Lake, that's his name. And he conducts these workshops and he calls it mind reading. So the right brain activities are conducted. They are told to pick up any book and they open any page and they are told to read it out, similarly the way she was doing it. And even the colors and the calculations also. So they do mathematics as well with mind reading. So the numbers are written on a page and they are shown, what into what or what is divided by what. And the numbers, and they get the answers in a jiffy.
Wow.
So that's miraculous, yes.
We're talking about a box of self-treasures here, as you can see, all the cases we saw and that we will see. As you understand, this is too short a workshop to do all these things together. I'm running fast. Somatic awareness, experiencing vivid imaging of arteries or bodily parts, determining by spontaneous tastes or smells your stress level. Communication abilities, saying something unexpected in unison with someone else, especially between couples or in family, you see that very often. Sensing correctly who is calling on the phone. Feeling the pains of a distant friend. Feeling what someone else is thinking. Communication with animals. Actually, I want you to read out that thing at your room tonight and, feeling what you have done so that tomorrow it will make our task far easier to make the groups. Now, the next thing is communication with animals. Can we communicate with animals? Not only can we communicate with animals, we can also learn how to do so. We go.
This black leopard, called Diablo,
had been rescued from a European zoo where he'd been abused. That experience had made him suspicious and vicious. All he did was sit in his night shelter and snarl at anyone who came close to him. 6 months in, and Jörg was at a loss as to how to deal with this cat.
That whole atmosphere there was a vibe of regression and of I hate you and I will kill you. And you know, the one encounter I had with him, he sent me to hospital 1 bite, 1 week.
Here, I thought, was the perfect case. If Anna could get this animal to change his behavior and become well adjusted, then I would have no choice but to acknowledge that she was in dialogue with animals. It took me some time, however, to convince Jörg to bring in Anna.
He's a dangerous cat. He's very, very dangerous. He's towards me and towards everybody else. In my opinion, the chances of an animal communicator changing that, it'll take a lot to convince me. I honestly do not believe that an animal can talk to a human or communicate with a human. I've had animals my whole life. We give them commands, we give them instructions, and they do it as we habituate them, basically. But I'm very skeptical to think that an animal like Diablo will communicate or can communicate with humans. I am desperate, however. I do not want to lose him.
I made sure that Anna had no information on Diablo or his history before she came to speak to the black leopard. I was nervous to see what would happen, as this animal never let anyone near his night shelter without a lot of snarling and growling. But the minute he saw Anna, he calmed down and let her kneel right outside and look at him.
This beautiful black leopard that you've asked us to communicate with is very overawed by his new surroundings, having come from a very cramped and stressful place for him. That this place has been provided for him, but he's been quite conditioned by a very unfortunate past. He doesn't want much to do with humans as a result. He's immensely powerful, and I mean not just physically, which you well know and respect, but he's immensely powerful with wisdom and an energetic presence and personality that is far bigger than anyone has ever appreciated about him before. And he commands a certain amount of respect for that. Again, not in a needy way, but really just by virtue of who he is as a being. There's a very particular thing about his name, Diablo. He wants that name changed because he doesn't like the associations with it, the blackness, the darkness, the diabolical. And when asking him about his past before coming here, he shows concern for 2 young cubs that were next to him. He's asking what happened to them with a great sense of care and concern.
We actually forgot about that. When we went to fetch him, there was so much excitement about bringing him back here. It actually slipped my mind until she said, he asked about the 2 cubs, and then we've remembered there were 2 little young leopard cubs next door to him that came from Rustenburg, and they were sort of semi-wild. They weren't hand-reared, and it just slipped my mind. And when they talked about it, I couldn't believe, I actually did believe it. I mean, then I really believed that they were communicating.
And she communicated with him, and when we spoke to her and she relayed all the information back to us, firstly I didn't believe her. You know, it's things that anybody can think out, and you can think, And then she said something about the cubs that were with him. And that changed this whole thing, because now all of a sudden, that's something that she didn't know about.
And I've also reassured him that you have no demands of him here, that you're quite happy to not make any physical demands of him or any expectations for display or interaction, that you're really willing to let him be how he wants to be. And that's given him an enormous sense of relief. Yeah. And having told him that is for the first time made him actually genuinely interested and now exploring a bit further. Now that he feels that he's not being asked to come out more, he's genuinely interested in being relaxed enough to have a natural curiosity come out and to actually expand his horizons a bit.
And Yeh was just stunned when the black leopard walked out of his night shelter into the larger enclosure later in the afternoon. In the 6 months that the cat had been here, Yeh had never seen him out of the night shelter. He then decided to rename the leopard Spirit.
We told him that same afternoon that we're not going to call him Diablo anymore. And we understand and we agree with that the diabolical side of it. That's not what he is to us. And we'd like to change his name to Spirit. As I walked to him, I thought, listen, he asked about the 2 young leopards. And I thought, well, I'm here now, there's nobody else here. I'm not going to look like a fool if he ignores me. I'll tell him what happened to those leopards. And as I called him and I said Spirit, and he was looking at me, he was lying like that, I said, with regard to the 2 little leopards, I just want to assure you and I want to tell you that they're safe. And I couldn't help it. I just said to him, wow, you're beautiful.
Beautiful. Oh, that's mooi. That's mooi.
And he gave me that, oh. And I thought, what's happening here? And I said to him, you understand what I'm telling you if I say to you that you're the most stunning cat? Oh. And I spoke to him and he answered me about 19 times. And he just sat there and he was totally relaxed. It's the first time since we had him that I felt at ease with him. I felt that he was relaxed and he understood me. It was, to say that I don't know what it feels like for him. For me, it was the most amazing moment.
Later that afternoon, Anna came back to check up on Spirit and to see how he was doing.
I'm asking him now about how he experienced the communication from Jochen through the fence. And he said it's the first time that someone has directly expressed to him verbally appreciation for who he really is, not how they see him to be. And that really surprised him. It shows me an image of literally stopping in his tracks by surprise at that sense of just this wall of appreciation coming towards him. He is so relieved that nothing's being demanded of him here. He's just so relieved. It's like this weight is lifted from his shoulders. And when he was grunting back, he said he was saying thank you for the thank yous. So each thank you he was getting, he was saying thank you back. Is there anything you'd like to say about that feedback?
I think we'll talk about this a bit later. I can't listen. So we'll talk about this later. It's okay. I'm overwhelmed.
As